just wanted to do a few rounds of introduction, if that's okay. So I will kick off. As Amy said, I am Hannah. I am the Community Navigator, and I am a charity consultant. So I work a lot with large, medium, small organisations across the country and the wider kind of voluntary and community sector, supporting them to deliver their strategies and make sure that they can maximise their impact. So before we kind of kick off in terms of the session, I'd like to ask you guys to do a bit of in blind date style, what's your name and where you come from, if that's okay. So I know who I'm speaking to today. So Jess, would you mind kicking us off, if that's okay?
Hi, for some reason my camera isn't working.
That's okay, Jess, no worries.
Turned on,
We
but
can hear you.
my name's Jessie. I work for West Ham Community Enterprises.
Amazing, thanks, Jessie. Julie? Nice to see you again, Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I too work for West Ham Community Enterprises.
Amazing. Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz. I work for the Colourworks Foundation.
Amazing, nice to meet Liz. Lorraine?
Hi, I am CEO of SWOD, which is a not-for-profit training organisation.
Amazing, thanks, Lorraine. Simone?
Hi, my name is Simone. I work for ActFast. So we work with parents whose children have experienced sexual abuse.
Amazing, thank you, Simone. And Stacey?
Hi, I'm Stacey and I work for Win on Waste. We do waste and recycling stuff locally.
Super, thank you guys. So we are going to kick off in terms of the session today then. So for all of you that came to the last masterclass, these do follow on, but they are kind of independent. So if you want to go back and have a look at the last masterclass that I ran back in July before all of the summer holidays, please do feel free to have a look at that. But today we are going to be looking at how to develop a strategy. Okay, now this is in the context of charity strategy, because that's my bread and butter. But the principles that I'm going to talk you through today can be applied to any organisation. Okay, and it can be applied to any scale of organisation as well. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is strategy, first and foremost. We're then going to talk through the strategy jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so that's a kind of model that I've pulled together, which kind of pulls all of the key principles and things you need to think about in terms of developing a strategy. We're then going to kind of speak through actually displaying a strategy. Okay, so pulling it all together in one page. All right, so those are the kind of three key themes of today's session. You will notice as we go through, there's quite a lot of text on these slides. Okay, there's a reason for that. So when you guys leave this session, if you don't look back at the recording, you can understand exactly what I was saying, all right, on each of those slides. I won't be talking through line by line the kind of context that's on those slides and those words on the slides today. All right, I will make sure that it's kind of more light touch than that. But when you look at the slides and you think, whoa, there's a lot of information on there, it's just so you can refer back to them afterwards. Okay. So we've talked about who I am, so I won't go through that. But we're going to kick off with what is strategy. Okay. So it's really, really simple in terms of when you need to think about strategy and how it's delivered. So a strategy is a plan of action, okay, designed to achieve a long-term goal or vision. All right. So last time out, we spoke a lot about creating your vision and your mission for your organization. Essentially, a strategy pulls together that vision that you've decided and how are you going to get there. Okay. So you cannot have a strategy without a vision and a plan. All right. So that is the fundamental. So if once you've got your vision set, the strategic plan is all about how you're going to deliver that and the steps that you're going to take. Okay. So one of the things that you most probably need to think about is when you're devising your strategies, what are the kind of biggest challenges that you're facing? What's holding you back? Or what are the biggest opportunities that you've got coming up on the horizon that you want to exploit? Because a strategy is all about how you're going to almost win the period ahead. Okay, and I hate that word, but it's a really, really good word to describe what a strategy should achieve. Okay, so thinking about that kind of big, hairy, audacious goal that we spoke about last time, that this is what we want to achieve in the next 5 years, this is what that destination point looks like and how we're going to get there and how we're going to win against that vision. Okay. And I think the big thing to mention at this point is that actually, when you are devising your strategies, nothing should be off the table. Okay. Think about everything. Think about every little bit of challenge that you have, every bit of opportunity that you have, because actually by being really freeing in your thinking will give you a really, really holistic view of how you want to plan to kind of reach that vision. All right. Okay. So you also need to think about what will the key inputs be. Okay. So when you're devising your strategy, it's really, really important to think about what are the different elements of your work that will feed into that strategic plan. Okay. So it's not enough just to think, okay, well, we're going to get 3 or 4 people around a table, because that is almost kind of becomes a very, very subjective view of what needs to happen. What you should be doing is thinking about what are the kind of objective key inputs that will devise that strategy. So what's really, really important to think about at this point is team feedback. So a lot of you I know on this call will have really, really small teams, or you might be just the team, okay? So that you'll have to think about that scale. But in large organizations that I work with, we absolutely build in a place for teams to be feeding back their thoughts on the kind of strategic view of what they want to take. So the plan of how to do that. Another really kind of good one is kind of thinking about leadership one-to-ones. So again, you guys might have really, really small teams, but where you have larger organizations, it's really, really important to think about who are the different people holding those leadership roles and how do you capture their views on that. Another one is around kind of current governance arrangements that you might have. All kind of charities, organisation groups generally do have a constitution. That's really important from a kind of charity commission perspective. And it's really important to understand what's working well in terms of those current governance arrangements in terms of reference, for example, and what isn't. And what can you take from those different kind of documents or those learnings or those meetings to really understand what's working really well and what isn't to drive that strategy forward. Your annual impact report, I would say, is most probably one of your key bits of information that you need to pull into the strategy development process, because what that will tell you is what you've already achieved and what is the progress against, I guess, the vision that you already have. And that should be able to give you some really kind of key information of, well, what comes next. Okay, so really think about that. One of the big things at the minute is the current financial situation. So remember that your strategy should almost drive your fundraising or income generation plans, not the other way around. All right. I know that's really, really tough right now because funding is at an all-time low, and I'm dreading the budget next month. But we'll see what comes out of that. But really, really thinking carefully about your current financial situation will really, really help you to understand strategically what you need to deliver. So one of the kind of clients I have at the minute, their response, the kind of work that I'm delivering with them is really thinking about their strategic plan to overcome quite a significant deficit. All right. So really starting to think about actually what is affordable is really key in this situation. And finally, evidence, insight, and data sets. Okay. So really thinking about what evidence that you have around maybe the services that you deliver, for example, the insight that you have around your beneficiaries or customers using your services is really, really important to use in this process. Okay. So just kind of a few things to think about in terms of what those inputs will be. All right. I'm just going to pause there. Has anybody got any questions or anything not kind of striking with them at the minute? No? Okay, amazing. Right, I will move on then. Okay. So the big kind of chunky piece that we're going to talk through today is how you actually deliver and devise a strategy. And I call this the strategy jigsaw puzzle because they are kind of 4 interconnected pieces of work that should be on your kind of checklist to deliver your strategic plan. Okay. And they're these. Okay. So the first one is around clarifying your vision. All right, so this is what we spoke about in the first session before the summer holidays. I'm going to briefly just kind of give us a little bit of a recap on that in a second. Okay. The next one is understanding what's holding you back. Okay. This is really, really important. And identifying your accelerators and your key sticking points is most probably the biggest part of devising your strategic plan. The next one is deciding your general approach. Okay, so I've talked there about evidence and insight and data and understanding all of that. But unfortunately, that can only tell us so much. And sometimes, as a group of leaders or the people that are in charge of delivering strategy, there's just some really tough decisions that you might have to make about what you will and won't do. Okay. And then the final piece is around identifying how all of that will be achieved. Okay. So first things first then. Okay, so we've got setting vision and mission. All right, I'm not going to labor this too much because I think the majority of you were on the call last time around, but this is the first kind of cornerstone of that jigsaw piece. All right, so your vision is the statement that refers to the future goals for your organization, what a company or organization wants to become, the direction it wants to go in, and how it intends to get there. Your vision is something that needs to be quite big, hairy, audacious, and it should be something that really, if you achieved it, would mean that your organization no longer needed to exist. Okay, so it should be that kind of innovative and that ambitious, right? The vision generally does get tweaked and refined for charities sometimes, but generally they are so audacious and so ambitious that you don't need to, because actually the time it would take to deliver your vision would almost kind of outgrow the whole organization. So it needs to be really, really big. Okay. And then your mission is, and the statements that kind of refer to your mission are the present activity. Okay, so it answers questions like what the organisation does, what the beneficiaries seek, the services it provides. And it should be a statement that motivates your teams as well as you to work in sync to deliver that vision. Okay, so the first starting point is, if you do not have a vision statement for your organisation, please go away and try and kind of start devising one. And the masterclass that I did in July has all of the kind of key information of how you do that, if you want to go and have a look at that. But remember, both of those statements should communicate the fundamental purpose of why you exist, who you serve, and how you serve them. Okay, so that's the first kind of cornerstone of the kind of jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so now we're going to get into the big chunky stuff. Okay, so this is the next jigsaw piece. Okay, and it's around understanding what's holding you back and what's pushing you forward. Okay, so sometimes, and I see it all the time working with my charity clients, is that you have a vision statement that jumps to a set of, I guess, activities. Okay, so they have a vision and then they say, right, to achieve this, we're going to do this. Okay, what the crucial step those organisations have missed out is identifying the kind of main blockers and accelerators that will overcome all of those different challenges and opportunities that will get to the vision. Okay, I can't kind of, I guess, stress enough the importance of identifying those things. And I know sometimes that's really, really difficult. And actually that raises some quite most probably uncomfortable truths potentially about organizations. But those, if you don't deliver on kind of identifying those key elements of the work, your strategy will be really, really incomplete. Okay, because the sticking points that you've not called out will continue to hold you back. And I see this a lot in terms of potentially organizational culture, for example. That's a really, really good one in terms of people not being invested in the work, not understanding their role within the work. And the organizations that don't do well in this space are the people that ignore that. Okay. And one of the kind of really, really good tools to do that is the SWOT analysis template that I've put on the screen here. Okay, it's a really, really simple tool to be really identifying those kind of main blockers and the accelerators. Okay, so what's really, really important to recognise is that actually there's almost two halves to the SWOT analysis. To this top half, which is your strengths and your weaknesses, generally relate to the internal factors within your organisation. Okay, and there's a really simple way of doing this in terms of you getting a kind of flip chart piece of paper up, and you just start post-it noting from a kind of brainstorming exercise, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. And you don't need to pigeonhole in terms of the themes that you're trying to gather on kind of your strengths and weaknesses. Just getting everything down at this point is really, really crucial. Okay, and I've started to pull kind of some examples of that on here. So a lot of the strengths that I see is that people have really good kind of strong local presence and brand. They have highly skilled teams. They have great visions for impact, for example. Some of their weaknesses might be that actually there's a kind of lack of fundraising strategy. There's a lack of digital presence, for example. Okay, and some of these might chime with you, some of them might not. All right. And then the second half of these, the bottom half of the SWOT analysis, are your opportunities and your threats. Okay, and it's really important to start thinking about these as also the external things that might happen to the organisation or might impact the organisation. Okay, so your opportunities might be things like other kind of working with other partners, for example, emerging technologies, growing your online presence. Okay. Your threats might be actually competition. For example, you might have a supporter base that is kind of aging. Okay, if you're a kind of income generating charity, for example, there might be regulatory changes that might affect us. Okay, and the political landscape is a really hot potato at the minute in terms of the threats to the charitable sector. So delivering and understanding your opportunities and your accelerators and your sticking points and your blockers and all of those things organisationally can be done through the SWOT analysis template. Okay, it's really, really simple just to kind of get your post-it notes up to start with. Okay, and then this links into the third kind of jigsaw piece that I'm going to talk you through today. Okay, and this is about deciding your general approach. Okay. So once you've completed your SWOT analysis, you'll often see kind of key themes emerging. So if there's a group of you doing this, and I would advise that a group of you do this when you're delivering your strategy, you'll start to see that multiple people are saying the same thing. Okay, what that allows you then to do is become quite clear, and they become the foundation, those themes, of your strategic goals and the general approach that you want to take. So what you should be seeing at this point is most probably some things that you really want to continue with, that are your accelerators. Okay, so we want to continue to deliver the high quality sustainable services. For example, that might be one of the things that you see. And you might see some of the blockers emerging. Okay, and one of those blockers could be that we need to ensure that you're a financially fit organisation. Okay, that might be one of the goals. Okay, but it's really important at this point when you're doing those themes, okay, to really understand actually what is the data and evidence and insight at this point of your key inputs that you pull in to validate some of those goals that are starting to see. Okay, so are those things right? Is your evidence and insight telling you that they're right? Your gut is really good, okay, but you also need to look at your evidence and insight. And you can see here on some of the kind of pictures that I've put on here. I did a strategy development session with a local charity in the last few months, and I wanted to share these pictures because you'll see that actually there's lots of different post-it notes saying the same thing. Yeah, okay. So you'll see in the weaknesses that there was lots that came in around IT and digital transformation, for example. Again, in the opportunities, there was some really, really good opportunities that organisation wanted to drive in a new area that they were developing in Wiltshire, for example. So I wanted to show you that, to kind of give you an example of what that starts to look like in that process. I also think it's really important to recognise in this point the priority in which that you do things. Okay, so if you're delivering against a kind of 3-year strategic plan, you do not need to have delivered everything in the first year. Okay, so it's really, really important to recognize that actually you will have so much stuff that comes out of this kind of process of doing your SWOT analysis. Some of it you will want to discard because you'll think actually that's not a priority, and some of it you'll say absolutely yes, that is a priority, but we need to think about the sequence of activity that we're doing it in. Okay, so one of the things, and an example of that is this organisation that I was working with really wanted to understand actually how it became much more, I think, digitally mature as an organisation. But the first thing that they recognised was that they didn't even have standard operating procedures of how people use Teams. Okay, so they were going to have a really, really big journey from the first priority of creating standard operating procedures about how everyone would use Teams to how they would use artificial intelligence and support journeys through a digital framework. Okay, so their journey of the next kind of 5 years would take them through that, and that's how they were going to sequence that activity. All right. I think as well, it's really important to most probably get into the headspace at this point in that you will have lots of goals emerging that you can't possibly deliver on all of them. I would say you have a top 5. You do not have any more than a top 5 in a strategic planning period, whether that be 3 or 5 years. And you will most probably need to call on your gut, okay, to decide which ones that you do, okay? Because a strategy is as much about saying what you are going to do as well as saying what you aren't going to do, okay? And by being really, really clear at this point around these are the strategic goals that we're going to go for, means that you don't get distracted later on when something comes left field or a curveball comes in to say, oh, well, should we do that instead? The answer is no at that point because you set your stall in terms of these are the top 5 that we're going to be doing. Okay. I'm going to just pause there. Has anybody got any questions or anybody got any comments or thoughts? Anything confusing anyone at this point? Lorraine, go for it.
What happens if you're a part of a team and there is a significant difference of opinion as to what the top 5 things are?
Yeah, good question. It's a really, really good question. And this is where your decision-making framework as an organization comes into play. And that doesn't have to be anything complex. Okay, Lorraine, what I'm saying is it's all about being really clear on who has that final say. And that is generally a chief executive or a kind of operations lead or the kind of operations director, whatever that structure is in your organization. If you cannot get to consensus, and generally you do get to consensus as this a part of this process, that person would be the final decision maker. So that person who is the highest person in the organization would be the decision maker in that scenario. Okay. Anybody else? No. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to move on then to the kind of final piece of the jigsaw, which is identifying how all of this will be achieved. Okay. I am really sorry that this slide is really busy, all right? But I wanted to make sure that I'd captured all of the information. So when you go away, you've got it and you can retain it, okay? So the next thing, once you've kind of created that kind of top 5 kind of goals, one of the things that works if you're working in a larger organization is then being able to cascade that through, okay? And once the kind of organizational kind of strategy is set at that top level, and these are the 5 strategic goals, what then really starts to, if you get your strategy development spot on, what will then happen is that individual team members, kind of groups, channels for delivery, departments, whatever you have in your organization, starts to develop their own activities to meet those strategic goals. Okay, so you'll start to see that actually at every layer of the organization, you're responding strategically to what you're trying to deliver. When you don't have that size of organization, and I don't think most probably anyone on this call most probably has that size here, what's really important then is once you've got those strategic goals set, that you start to create a bit of a plan of, well, what does this mean and what does this look like? So one of the things that I work really closely with my clients on is you've got your strategic goal. We then start to pull out, well, what what would success look like if we achieve that? Okay. And how are we going to do it? Okay. And that gives you the activity level of this is how we're going to achieve our strategy. And you start to pull that down in the different kind of time frames. Okay. So one of the things that I said on the previous slide, but I just want to reiterate here, is don't try and do everything. Okay. And this is remembering that, you know, although everybody wants to be ambitious, your team, your organization can't do everything. And it's really important to recognize that. Okay. And the strategy that you develop is about trying to meet the goals that will have most impact on that vision. Okay, so really think about picking the things that are going to give you the most bang for buck, okay, or are going to unlock a really, really big issue that you're seeing. And when a team is involved in developing strategy, it gives real ownership and accountability and empowers them to know how their work will deliver on the overall vision. So whatever size organization that you have, and we've got the drop in next week, and once you've reflected on this, if there's questions around how you involve your team members, what would that need to start to look like for your organisation? Have a think about that, and we can kind of do a bit more of a deep dive next week on that if you want to. Okay. And then finally, I think this was just a bit of a kind of, I guess, a touch point in terms of a lot of organisations that I work with actually don't have an organisational strategy. And I can't stress the importance of having one, because if you don't have a strategy, there is no plan of how you're delivering the work that you're delivering. It is the absolute foundation of the work that you should be delivering. And sometimes what I see is when I work with larger organizations, that department teams often have to create a strategy out of nothing. Because they absolutely know that they need a plan, but actually their senior leadership team haven't thought about what that looks like. So what you end up with is this kind of really, really disjointed and almost cart before horse, horse before cart situation, in that leaders and kind of department teams are trying to speak to their leaders to get information out of them around what is the plan, what is the vision, and create their own strategies on the back of that. What that really, really does is create a really disjointed organization. So as a group of leaders on this call, it's really, really important that you set the tone, you set the kind of direction for all of the people that you work with. And that's just not your team internally, that's externally too. So actually people can really understand how they fit into your world and how you can collaborate together, how you can maximize impact, for example, from that starting point of the strategy. Okay, super. Okay, so they are the 4 elements. All right. I'm just going to kind of talk you through now the strategy house, and then we've got some about 10 minutes left for any questions that anyone might have. So this is the kind of strategy house and how it all fits together. Okay, so this is a really, really good template that I use all the time. So please feel free to kind of take as your own, absolutely no problem. That demonstrates your strategy all on one page. Okay, so the top of your house, your roof, okay, that is your vision. Okay, so that is your umbrella statement of this is the big, hairy, audacious goal that we're going to create. Okay. The next layer, which is your loft, okay, is your mission. All right. So that is how in the present activity you plan to start to get there. Okay. You then have your kind of 3 to 5 strategic goals. And I've put 3-year strategic goals here. It might be 5, okay? I wouldn't do anything less than 3, and I wouldn't do any more than 5 in terms of your strategic goals, because lots of things change in that time, okay? Not only internally, but externally, okay? And I always like to think about actually the kind of general election in that kind of scheme of things, because a kind of parliament generally lasts 4 to 5 years. And actually, if you align your strategic plan to a period that kind of fits into that, that generally works really well. Okay. So your strategic goals, whether you have 3 or 5, all right, they are the kind of walls that are keeping your house up. Okay. So think about that as the kind of really clear, they are keeping the structure of your house up, all right? And then finally, your foundations that underpin your house are your organizational values, okay? So if you do not have a set of kind of organizational values, come to the drop-in next week. We can talk about that in terms of how you want to create those, okay? But you should be really underpinning your organization with a set of values. And this is about values describe almost your organizational culture. So actually how you do the work rather than what the work is, okay? So you'll start to most probably see some values around dependability, kind of courageousness, all of those types of things, okay? But we can talk about that more next week, okay? So that kind of summarizes everything that I wanted to go through today. Okay, so as I said, the next advice drop-in is on the 20th of September at 11 a.m. If you want any more information, there's loads of free resources on my website. Please have a look. Feel free. They're all PDFs. You can download them. I also have a Steps to Success quiz as well. Okay, so the Steps to Success quiz gives you a free kind of personalised report for every organisation that kind of goes through it, along kind of 5 key areas of kind of charity operations, everything from strategy to people and culture to governance to funding to operating models. And what that does, it gives you kind of a score on actually how well you're performing on each of those areas, and some kind of hints and tips of how you can improve, and links to free resources to how to do that. So if you want to have a go at that, please feel free to follow that link once you get the deck. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so I'll end the show so I can see you all. Has anybody got any questions, any thoughts on any of that I've gone through today? I hope it's been helpful. Yes, go for it, Liz.
Yes, it's a little bit about, you're talking about your strategy being based on what you've set your kind of audacious vision to be. I'm trying to work out what my question is. I guess it's around, I understand your strategy is going to be linked to your vision, but your vision is almost something that, like you said, it's a big audacious vision that I guess, that you're not expecting to achieve within your lifetime, otherwise your charity wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So
is the question about like, well, how do you create the strategy then on something that's never going to be achieved?
Okay.
I
guess it's kind of, why do you link it to that and not the mission of what you're actually doing?
So you can think about, so the mission almost describes, doesn't it, the strategic goals in a nutshell, in a sentence, right? That's what the mission should be doing. So if you're providing services, we provide the best services to ensure that people that might be sort of something the mission says. In terms of the vision, each strategic planning period that you have should be mapping the next phase of the journey against that vision. Okay, so think about it, that you're never going to get there, but it's the journey that you take. So one of the things, for example, that I was developing for the charity shelter, okay, so their kind of overall vision is that everyone has the right to a safe home. That is their vision, okay. And as I kind of went through the strategic plan, the 5 years that I was there, the strategic planning process, the journey to that was getting the government to build more social housing, to agree to building more social housing. Now, that's never ever going to get to the point of everyone having the right to a safe home, but what it is doing is that actually supply is a huge problem. So as part of that SWOT analysis that we did, was like, right, okay, so if the vision is this over here in terms of everyone's right to a safe home, what are the kind of good things that we're doing now, what are the bad things, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and what does this phase of the journey in the next 5 years look like to get us to that point? So think about the journey, not the destination.
And then another thing that I've always struggled with is when you set your 3-year strategy or 5-year strategy or whatever, and you're reviewing it each year within that time frame. So kind of what happens when you get to the end of the 3 years, 5 years? Do you start again?
So I would say at that point, it's never about revolution, it's about evolution. In that actually there might be some things in the last 5 years that you wanted to do on that journey to that vision that actually you've not been able to. And that
Yeah.
might be because of the political landscape, funding, for example, the fact that actually the organisation might have had to have gone through a huge period of restructure, or, you know, it's gone through quite a lot of turmoil. Those things can absolutely be reset again into the new strategic plan. But what I would say is, when you're reviewing, you should be reviewing your kind of objectives and your activities every year against those strategic goals that you've set. But when you come to the end of that kind of strategic planning process, in the 6 months preceding that, you do the full SWOT analysis again. So you
Okay.
go through, you keep going through the same process.
Yeah.
What have you
Okay.
learned? What looks different? What are the things that we wanted to do that we couldn't do because of X, Y, and Z reason? Do they
Okay.
still look the same, or do they look differently? Yeah, make
Okay,
sense?
brilliant. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
That's really
perfect.
helpful.
No worries. Simone?
Hiya. So I guess my question is more, so we've done some of this work already, and
Amazing.
then how do we present that in a way that is kind of concise and not excruciatingly boring for other people to read that don't know our organization? Because when we started, I kind of imagined a 4-page document. And then the more stuff that gets added. So I guess what I'm asking you is, does this document need to have everything on there? So does it need to have like our history and our background? Does it need, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is there a template or something that says this is a really concise, interesting strategy plan?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to that, Simone, is what I'm saying. I think in answer to that question, I think in terms of the kind of strategy development I do, the strategy house that I've shown you is like the main thing that helps people to get it onto one page. But I would say that is very much an internal document. Okay, because it is a little bit boring, right? Let's not cut, like, let's cut through it. It is a little bit boring. But what that does, it gives you a kind of a really clear deck of, these are all of our strategic goals, these are how they all fit together. What I generally work with my clients that kind of we get to this point is we then kind of work with somebody who is a marketing specialist, whether that's internally or externally, to make all of that look really, really pretty on one page. And sometimes it might need to be a little bit bigger than that. But one of the things that I think is really, really important is that actually you don't have any jargon in there. You are speaking kind of the same language as the people that you're either trying to attract to deliver a service to or get funding off, essentially, and that you are really clear on what those kind of 5 strategic goals will achieve in that piece of document. Some people like to have their values on there, their backstory. I personally think that actually, if you just have a 1-page strategy document, that's enough, and then you can link people back to your website, other documents. But what I would say is the kind of main thing is, think about your language, think about the audience, but really underpin that vision and mission statement with those goals and actually what that actually means. Because sometimes, you know, some of the goals that I work with charities on around ensuring a financially fit organisation. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, to me, that means that actually you're making sure that you're in the black, that actually your income isn't exceeding, sorry, your expenditure isn't exceeding your income. So it's really distilling that back down into actually language that people can understand. And that takes a bit of time. So when you get out of this process, the organisation I'm working with, I'm actually doing that this afternoon with them. So actually taking it from this strategy house and this document to a bit of language that people can understand and can pick that up and say, okay, I'm a marketing assistant in this organisation and that's what it means to me. Likewise, I'm somebody who's a regular donor of this organisation and this is what it means. So it's striking that balance. But I would say take some time to do that well.
Yeah, okay. And then once we've done all of that, what do we do with it? Do we just publish it on our website? Do we, because some funders will allow you to send additional documents.
Yep.
Some don't want you to send anything beyond their questions. So
do you mean in terms of for when you're getting funding, Simone, or just communicating a bit.
generally, like
Yeah.
what should we be doing with it once we've done all of this work, we've got this fabulous document? Do we then just like, so what kind of thing? Like, where do we put it, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of what's coming next, so the next masterclass session, it's actually about implementing strategy.
Okay.
And one of the things that we're going to talk about is the message house. Okay. So I do have another template that you can use around a message house. Okay. And that's about how you communicate that internally and externally to people.
Okay.
And actually what's the good practice. But if you are, what I would say is just on the last minute that we've got, it's really, really good practice once you've delivered your strategic plan to communicate that internally and be really intentional about that, because people need to know actually if something is shifting, which sometimes it does in a strategy, what that means for them. And in the landscape, I think that we're moving towards in terms of funding becoming really difficult, actually that might mean some really quite tough choices for organisations about what they do and don't do moving forward. So just think about the intentionality of that, but we'll cover it next time in October.
Lovely. Thank you.
Amazing. Anything else from anyone? Amazing. Okay, we are on time. I'm not sure how I managed that, Amy, because I do like to talk, but I'll let you close if that's okay.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much today, Hannah. So like Hannah said, there's an advice drop-in session on September the 20th. I think, Lorraine, you're booked on, but I will send the link around if anybody wants to come along and has any specific questions that they want to ask with Hannah. And then the final masterclass is on the 15th of October, but I'll send that booking link around with the slides and the recording of the session as well. Yeah, has anybody got any final questions before we finish?